Good morning. Today is Thursday, July 1st, 2021. Happy Canada Day. Perhaps the most famous prayer that we have, Shma Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Listen, Israel, Hashem our God, God is one. It expresses the most fundamental concept of Judaism, Hashem Echad, God is one. But it also expresses another different but related fundamental concept. We include saying the Shema, the first line of the Shema, in addition to every morning and every evening. On Shabbos, we also include it in the Kedusha. In the reader's repetition of Musaf, we include the first line of the Shema. Why we include it there is a subject for another time. But before we say that line, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, in the Kedusha of Musaf on Shabbos and Yom Tov, we introduce it with the following words. We say, Mimkomo hu yifen barachamim, God, who is transcendent, who is distant, who is so far removed from us, but God turns to us in compassion and kindness, v'yachon am hamiyachadim shmo, and he shows graciousness and kindness and compassion to the nation that unifies his name, that expresses the oneness of his name. And we're referring, of course, to us, the Jewish people. We express the oneness of God's name when we say the Shema, Erev Avoker, every evening and every morning, B'chol Yom Tamid, every single day, without exception, Pamayim, twice every day, Ba'ahava, we say it with love, Shema Omrim, we say Shema. In other words, Shema, saying the Shema, defines us as a people. We are Am Hamiyachadim Shmo. We are the nation that expresses the oneness of God by saying the Shema. That is the term by which we are identified. Yesterday was the yahrzeit of Rabbi Yitzchak Herzog of blessed memory. He was a chief rabbi of Israel, and among his many efforts and accomplishments, he was extremely active in the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust. You may know that there were a number of children whose parents, wanting to save their lives, entrusted the children, very often babies, to Catholic institutions, to monasteries and convents. I'm sure most of them thought that they were doing it temporarily and that after the war they would come back to retrieve their babies. But of course, many of those parents, probably most of those parents, did not survive. And we know that after the Holocaust, there were more than 3,000 Jewish children hidden in monasteries and convents around Europe. And these children, who had been there, most of them since they were babies, they had no idea that they were Jewish. Rabbi Herzog was very active, and he was able to save more than 500 of these children and return them to the Jewish people, because had he not done so, they would have been lost forever. Rabbi Chaim Sabato writes a story in one of his books about one of the incidents that took place as Rabbi Herzog was engaged in this critical and very, very difficult work, trying to find and return these children. So, after the Holocaust, after the war, there was silence in general on the part of the church about these children. And it was extremely difficult to try to retrieve them. Now, I want to be clear, among Catholic officials and clergy, there was a range of responses. There were some, probably a minority, but there were some, and they should be remembered, who were very conscientious about returning these children to their Jewish families. But many of them did not. Many of them put up roadblocks. And Rabbi Herzog, as part of this effort, went to the Pope in the Vatican, and he pleaded with tears to the Pope to please find these children and allow them to be returned to the Jewish people. He said to the Pope, each one of these children is like 1,000 children to us. And it was very, very difficult. Rabbi Herzog went from monastery to convent, one place to another, and he would go to the head of the place, and he would say to them, please, I'm looking for Jewish children. And in most places, the person who was in charge would say, there are no Jewish children here. And he would try to press his case. He would ask to see the children. But of course, even if he would see them, it would often be impossible to tell because, again, since they were babies, they were brought up in this place. They looked identical to the other children. They dressed identically to the other children. And it was a very, very difficult task. He came to one place, made the same request. The nun who was in charge said the same thing. There are no Jewish children here. He said, may I see the children to verify for myself? And she agreed, and she let him see all the children. They were lined up, all dressed the same, all looked the same. And Rabbi Herzog spoke to the children, and he said to all the children there, he said, who here is a Jew? The children stood without moving. No sign of recognition, because of course, they didn't know they were Jewish. They had been there since they were babies. Absolute silence. And Rabbi Herzog and the people who were accompanying him were very, very disappointed again. And they prepared themselves to leave and to go to the next place to try what seemed like almost a hopeless task. The moment before they left, just as they were about to leave, Rabbi Herzog turns around to all the children and he yells out in a loud cry, Shma Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and 7 children put their hand over their eyes. And Rabbi Herzog said, those are Jewish children. They learned to do that because their mothers said Shema with them when they were babies in their crib. Those are Jewish children. Return them to their people. When we say Shema, we should be aware that we are proclaiming an essential truth about God, that God is one, Hashem Echad, God is one. And at the same time, we are proclaiming an essential truth about who we are, to whom we are connected, regardless of outer appearance, regardless of circumstance, regardless of location. We are Am Hamyachadim Shmo. We are the nation that proclaims the oneness of God. The people who proclaim that God is one, that is who we are. And that is how we are identified. My friends, I want to wish you a great day. And I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person.